Hi folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead. See that thing up in the sky? Well, you can't see it, but you can see it beating down on me. Look at that. Yes, the sun is out. It's quite nice. It's in the 40s, but we've had quite a bit of rain again over the last couple of days. So to have a nice sunshiny day is a true blessing. So enjoying it. Today, I wanted to talk about skills that you need to be developing now. I did a video a while back, not too long ago, about how I believe that most everyone has some kind of skill to offer to a community, especially like post-SHTF. And that's kind of the mindset of what we're going at. So keep that in mind. You know, this is after some type of event, to whether it's your family, but especially kind of your little community, your tribe, people that you work together with. And I believe that, you know, pretty much everyone has some kind of, you know, thing to offer to something like that, as long as their heart is in the right place and they're motivated and they're willing to work hard. But, and then of course there's just, you know, the knowledge that you have now and the knowledge that you can, you know, acquire. But there's a difference really between knowledge and skill. Skill is, well, the ability to put the knowledge into action. So let's talk about those. You see, the world we live in today, our society, is obviously is very different than what it would be after, you know, some type of apocalypse happens. Move the camera, see if I can. It looks like it's bleaching me out there, the sun. And what I mean by that, of course, that's true in many aspects. But for the sake of this argument, in today's world, you can have one good skill. You know, you can go to college for it, trade school, be taught it, whatever it is. And that's your skill and you're good at it. And maybe that's the only real skill that you have. But if you're good at it, you can still make a go at it. You can, you know, be successful in life. And I'm using these as examples, but sorry, got a cat. Get out of here. Gonna knock things over. Not picking on anyone. I'm just using these as examples. But let's say you're a nurse. You've gone to school. You've got your degree. You've got your license. And you're a registered nurse. And you're really good at it. And you go out, you get a job, you can make a living at it. Well, at least in most places. But what if that's the only skill you have? What if you can't do anything else? You may not even be able to cook your, you know, own food, not even know how to do that. That's fine. You'll be all right. After everything hits the fan and we're really dependent upon each other and on our own, that may not necessarily be true. You need to have several different skills to kind of fall back on. You need to know more than just one thing. And you need to be developing those skills now. And some of it's going to be different than what would be necessary in today's world. You could be a computer programmer, a web designer. You may be really good at it, and you may be able to make lots of money at it. But if that's the only thing you know how to do, you may not get too far after the SHTF. So this is not in any way a complete list. This is just some things that I was thinking of, jotted them down, and there's many kind of subcategories within each one of these skill sets. So there's, you know, kind of sub-skill sets within them. The things that are the most important in my mind that would be top picks, and this is things that's just to keep you alive, you know, to sustain life. You need to be able to know how to grow food. I know there's people out there that know this very well, that watch this channel, because I have the greatest audience of any YouTube channel. You guys are really awesome. But there are many people out there that's never grown their own food. And while you may watch it on TV or even YouTube and you think, oh, well, it's easy. You put a seed in the ground, throw some water on it, boom, you got food. It's not. In a lot of ways, there's really kind of an art form to being successful in growing your own food. So it is a real skill. It's, yes, I get it. You can put a seed in the ground and, you know, you might get something to grow and you might get some food off it. But I'm talking about being able to raise food to live off of, you know, not to have a tomato plant in the potted, you know, in a pot sitting on your, you know, your porch. I'm talking about being able to grow enough food that will sustain you in your family or whatever. It takes a lot to do that. So that is something that you're going to have to learn how to do and get good at. Animal husbandry, taking care of livestock, taking care of animals that you will have or may have that will contribute to your life. It could be, you know, if your plan includes having draft horses to plow fields or to help you move trees around, something like that, well, then you better get good at raising and caring for draft horses. If your plan is to, like, well, we'll get us a milk cow and we'll raise her up and have milk, well, then you better get good at that. You better know about it. You better have a plan on how she needs to stay wet in milk, which means she, you know, is going to need a bull ever so often, about every year or so. You need to know how to do that kind of stuff. Take care of them, you know, provide for their medical needs, different things like that. You need to get good at it. That's kind of a skill. You know, you can read about it. You may have a book on this stuff. But there's a big difference between reading in a book and putting that into action. So there's a skill set, and it's an important one. Hunting and fishing. A lot of people say, well, SHTF happens, I'm just going to go out and, you know, get all our food in the woods and that sort of stuff. And, you know, I'm definitely going to be getting food that way too. But number one, so is everyone else. So that supply of food is going to dry up a lot faster than you think. But that aside, you better know what you're doing. If you don't know how, if you've never gone deer hunting before, but yet your plan is to go out and go deer hunting for food, you know, after the apocalypse happens, and you don't really know how to do it. Maybe you've read about it and watched some videos, or you watched some hunting show on TV, but you've never done it. You don't know how to, you know, get in there and find the deer and stalk them, or to sit somewhere and call them in, or whatever, track them down, whatever you're doing. You don't know how to field dress and how to butcher a deer and how to preserve, you know, the meat, then that knowledge isn't really going to do you a whole lot of good. So you need to have a skill for that. Foraging and herbal, I think that's a very important skill to have. You don't have to be a master of it, but you should know some of the basics. Medical is very important. It's a skill that I think everyone can have. It doesn't mean everyone has to be a brain surgeon or even a registered nurse, but everyone should have basic medical knowledge and skills, be able to actually do it. If someone falls and breaks their leg, do you know how to put a temporary kind of splint? Do you know how to make one out of what you have and splint that? If someone's got an arterial bleed, do you know how to stop that? Do you know how to put a tourniquet on that? You know, if someone has a nasty, dirty cut, say if it's a chainsaw and it needs to be cleaned out, do you know how to do that? Those types of things. To me, those are kind of basic skills that everyone should be able to come up with. Here's another one. It's not going to be for everyone probably, but midwifery. Doesn't get talked about a lot, but that is a skill that back in the old days was very important, because when you had a baby, there weren't hospitals and OBGYNs and all that kind of stuff to go to. There was usually certain women within the community that specialized in that, and they were the community midwives. And, you know, they're kind of making a comeback today, but that's something that in a community, you know, there needs to be someone that has the skill, the knowledge and skill of midwifery. Now, these are more secondary, meaning they're not quite as important for life-sustaining skills, but still very important in a community. And again, this list is not complete at all, and I encourage my listeners, they're really good about jumping in and offering more comments and suggestions. Please do so, I encourage, because, you know, it'd be a long video if I listed all the different possible skills that you should have in preparation for what's coming towards us. Some other skills would be cooking. That may seem silly to a lot of people, but you'd be surprised how many people don't know how to cook. I mean, they just flat out do not know how to cook. So you've got a bunch of rice in buckets. Do you know how to cook it? Do you know how much the rice to water ratio that you need, how long you need to cook it so that you have something that you can eat and at least enjoy? Now you might say, you know what, if I don't know how to cook, that's fine. I'll figure out some way. And you might be able to do that, certainly, but you're probably not going to enjoy it. And if you're having to eat, you know, off of your store supplies, your dry goods, your canned goods, freeze-dried, having a good palatable meal is going to make a difference. After a while, you know, if you're surviving for your life for a few weeks, you may not care, but after a while, it's going to matter to you having a tasty meal to eat, something that you enjoy. And so just having some basic cooking skills of knowing how to prepare these things, you know, if you have rice and beans, well, do you know how to do it? Do you have a water supply to cook them? Do you know how to do, you know, season these things? What kind of seasoning would you do? Like I said, rice to water and rice to bean, water to bean ratio. You know, you take a certain amount of water to cook it, to soften it, blah, blah, blah. It's the same with a lot of things. And again, you'd be surprised how many people do not, I mean, they couldn't fry an egg if they had to. Sewing, very important. Construction, building things. Do you know how to build things? Extremely important. Maybe you've never built anything in your life. You've never done construction. You need to start learning how. Maybe it's building a doghouse, or, you know, something small. At least get familiar with it. Understand how to build. You know, do little projects here and there on the weekend, just to kind of get good at that skill set. Mechanics, important. A lot of these new cars nowadays, man, they're a pain in the hind end to repair. But I don't think those are going to last very long in a SHTF situation. But a lot of the old cars may still. Of course, fuel would be a problem eventually. But being able to repair them, you know, minor repairs and stuff, you should be able to do those things now. Know how to change a tire, change your oil, you know, simple things. It's a good skill set to have. Repairing things, not necessarily auto mechanics, but just repairing, you know, engineering things, that kind of stuff. If a certain, you know, say you've got a solar system, do you know how to work on that? Do maintenance on it, repair things if they go down. You know, let's say something happens with your inverter. Well, you can't just go out and buy a new one because SHTF. Do you know how to take it apart and kind of tinker with it and possibly get it going again? And have the tools that you might need for that. Here's one I thought of. And give me some feedback on this one. Someone, and this is going to be especially true for communities. You know, your teams, your mags, your tribes, whatever. Someone that's really good at kind of that mediation, counseling, someone, and I think that is a skill. You know, some people just don't have it. Some people aren't that great at, like, you know, bringing people together that, you know, aren't getting along and trying to get them to kind of calm down and see things and, you know, and work things out, work problems out. Not everyone is good at that, but maybe you are. And that could be a valuable skill in a community, because I assure you, with the stress levels high and the fact that modern people aren't used to that type of community living situation, at least most people, there's going to be some tension between people eventually. And having someone that's really good at going in and kind of calming tempers down and getting people to reconnect and to get past problems is going to be probably pretty valuable on a community. Blacksmithing. Not a lot of people use blacksmiths anymore, but after SHTF, I guarantee you there's going to be a need for blacksmiths. Gunsmiths. And not just gunsmiths of modern things, but a gunsmith that can also work on old stuff. A gunsmith that can manufacture ammunition, which, you know, if you're into shooting, you should probably know how to do your own reloads. But gunsmith that may be able to manufacture black powder, you know, things like that. Because if it was a long-term down situation, having that kind of knowledge could be really important. Bushcrafting skills. everyone should have at least some bushcrafting skills. Can you start a fire without modern things? This type of stuff. Make at least some kind of rudimentary tools out of things in your natural things in your environment. Let me get that again. Food preservation could be drying, canning, smoking, curing, different things like that. Very important to have. And if you don't know how to do it now, you need to start practicing, because there'll come a day that you'll want that skill. Musical skills. This may not be something that keeps you physically alive, but most people, music is good for them in a psychological way. And I think, if you look back at cultures in the past before they had TVs and electronics and electricity that provided forms of entertainment, having someone and people in the community that could play guitars and banjos and fiddles and sing and stuff were actually very valuable people in that community. They looked upon them as with importance, because they helped relieve tensions, and they created an environment of entertainment and stuff. So having musical skills, that's a good skill set to have. May not keep you alive, but in a community, it'd be a good skill set. Scribe, someone that can document things, because if this SHTF happened and it was looking like it's going to be long term, it'd be a good thing to have someone that, like they used to back in the old days, in most every community, you had someone that kind of kept records of just what's going on, so that the generations following kind of knew what happened. You never know. It's a good thing to have. This one's important, at least while the stuff still works. A heavy equipment operator. Do you know how to operate this stuff? Backhoes, bulldozers, tractors, different things. Maybe you have them in your community, the equipment, or maybe you end up finding them after a situation. Having someone that can operate those things would be very good. Now, then there's the tactical stuff. Tactical, self-defense, community defense type stuff. Everyone should know how to shoot a gun. Everyone should know how to handle a gun, okay? If you're physically capable of holding that, then you should probably know how to use it in a community. And in days of old, children at fairly young ages started getting good at handling a weapon. And that's a reason why I've always kind of advocated when people talk about, what types of firearms and calibers and stuff to have for preparedness. I always advocate having a 22 and 22 shells. They obviously have other uses than this, but they're really good at training, getting, because they're not nearly as loud. You can store up a lot of ammunition. It's cheap. You can store up a lot. They're easy to shoot. So as your community is going along and you have kids, many of you will have kids as they start growing up, teaching them with a 22 is going to be a lot easier than handling in your M1 Garand type thing. But that's one reason why I advocate always having at least, 122 around for those purposes, if nothing else, even if you have no intention of using it for hunting or anything like that. Being able to scout things, track things, it's a good skill to have. You can read about it and learn a little bit about it in a book, but honestly, you're not really going to develop that into a good skill without someone that has good knowledge of it teaching you. Certain military services still, obviously teach that stuff. Not as much, at least they don't go in depth as much as they used to, because we have so much technology that does that stuff for us. But, your special operations type branches still, or groups still learn those types of things. And the Marines, I'm sure. Reconnaissance kind of falls into the same thing. Intelligence gathering, perimeter security, hand-to-hand combat. These are skills that you should learn, and And people within your community, you know, if you have someone that's really good at these things, then they need to be teaching other people within your mag and your community and tribe. These are good topics for, you know, group meetings to learn these things. And again, these are just a few things that I jotted down that you need to have multiple skills. Again, you may be the best mechanic in the world, but if that's the only thing you know how to do, you're going to be less valuable in a community, because you're not just going to be fixing cars all the time. You need to be able to do several other things. And so start now by not just reading about this stuff, but really developing multiple skills that will benefit you and your community after it all hits the fan. All right, thank you all for watching, and I'm going to enjoy this sun, because here lately we haven't had a lot of it. All right, thank you.